begins in sort of 33 AD and doing all the historical research, but he actually said no, he wanted me to paint it in a modern setting, so I kind of jumped at the chance. And as I say, it was kind of an odd detour, but certainly an interesting one technically for me. And I had a few problems initially because these works, unlike a lot of my work, are very small. They're only about 16 by 12 inches. And so for me, it was a technical challenge. And it also, because the works were so many, I had to come up with a new way of producing them. And up to this point, I had shot people mostly in situ. I would just take somebody out in front of a pop machine and do the photography on site, and that would be it. That would be fairly simple. But this, because there were so many paintings in the series, 14 altogether, I had to sort of improvise, because I couldn't drag 30 people out around the city of Vancouver, which was the setting. I think it would look kind of strange dragging a giant wooden cross through the streets. So what I had to do was I went and shot background plates in Vancouver of everything that I wanted to show, and then I shot all the figures in the studio. The first piece is called Jesus is Condemned to Death by Pontius Pilate, and it was Station 1. And this is Station 2, where Christ takes up the cross. I sort of had a few technical things to deal with at the beginning, like how was I going to dress the two fellows, which are, essentially Roman guards. I didn't want to dress them as policemen or military officers, because I wasn't really comfortable with that, sort of maybe, potentially offending potential congregants of the church at St. David's. So I just sort of chose the suit, which is kind of generic, kind of symbol of evil, I guess, in the modern world, sort of, CIA or mafia or whatever, your imagination would like to sort of conjure up. But again, I've shot folks in the studio and painted them into the background. It took a lot amount of planning. I did a series of preliminary drawings and then organized a photo shoot, which included, costuming and then obviously building a prop, or rather a set piece and having props, and then shooting all the good folks in the studio. And this is just a little example of me shooting the models. It really was quite a technical challenge, but I think it worked out fairly well. So here is all the folks set up to do Station 12, where Christ dies on the cross. Here I'll just show you a little example of the process of doing these paintings. You've sort of got a casual shot of all the folks here. This is the actual photograph that I did the final paintings from. And I mean, there certainly is sort of lots of small changes sort of at the base of the cross and such that are done in the final work. And so what I did, actually conscripted my dad to help me go out and shoot the background plates and act to scale while going around the city. And then composited the two together, which for me was something that I hadn't done before. I'd really kind of relied on just sort of doing the paintings out in the public and hoping that everything worked out. So, but it was quite a commission, and it certainly accelerated a lot of technical things for me, and it taught me quite a lot in a very short space of time, and has really informed a lot of what I'm doing now, and freed me up to do a lot to sort of carry out a little bit more ambitious ideas. This is the installation of the Way of the Cross at St. David's Church in Vancouver. As I say, they are very small. And so what the folks do is they'll stand in the pews and they will have a liturgical pamphlet that has prayers and such for each station, and they will stand and recite prayers to Station 1 and then move on to Station 2 and work their way back around to the altar. Once they were done and installed, we had a ceremony in which they had many important priests from the Anglican Church from the lower mainland of BC come and consecrate the works and literally bless them with holy water. They stood there and sort of splashed them, and they became actual holy objects, which was kind of a neat thing for me, for once. It was an incredible experience and fairly well received, thankfully, because I was very nervous that working with those themes and having to kind of be straight-faced about them and kind of having to leave irony at the door, I really hope to do my best to not offend and really sort of be true to the subject. And this is just one of the final Christ is taken down from the cross, just to give you just another idea of what the series was like. The fellow on the top right is actually the patron who commissioned the whole work. And then finally, Christ's Entombment. Overall, I mean, it was quite a project indeed. Like I say, after working for many months slaving away on this project, in 1996, I was finally free to get back to doing what it was that I did, what it was that I loved to do, which was really sort of tackling pop culture. And having been away from that subject for so long, I really sort of jumped right back into it wholeheartedly. And this is a piece called Royal Treats. And this is the title piece to a show I had at Diane Ferris in 1997 called Royal Treats. And I guess the Stations of the Cross has something of an influence in this piece in that it's the guy is in essence sort of taking communion at the Dairy Queen. He's taking the body of Christ, and this other fella has the wine. He's ready to give him the wine. So by this time, fast food had just completely taken over and come right front and center. I just got rather sort of obsessed with it as a topic. So this show, Royal Treats, kind of looked at all the Burger King and Dairy Queen and KFC and all those different institutions as, it was really sort of secret but central to a lot of what it is that we do and really symbolic of the mindset that we have nowadays. This image is fairly obvious, we're all sort of taking an oath and pledging allegiance to those institutions. And this work is titled McDonald's Nation, and you'll see that here too at the Hatton Gallery at CSU. It's my most oft reproduced work. The fine folks at Adbusters were kind enough to see it. Their offices are actually just around the corner from Diane Ferris Gallery in Vancouver. So they saw this piece sort of at the show or just shortly after, and were really keen to put it on the cover of their magazine, and I was very keen to have them do so. They were very, very gracious and very nice people, and oddly enough, this painting sort of came around as a total fluke. I had just happened to have an odd piece of canvas left over from doing some other works, and really just sort of came up with this image off the cuff, just sort of one afternoon trying to think up something to do for this, because I don't normally paint in a square format. So in a way, it's sort of been the most throwaway image for me in terms of conception, but has really been sort of the most disseminated and affected the most people. So that work sort of set me on the path of focusing strictly on McDonald's for my next show, which coincidentally was in 1998, was also called Mctopia. I wanted to build an installation piece rather than just strictly rely on paintings. And so this is a multi-piece. The bottom piece is about 5 by 6 feet, and the top, it's 2 feet by, I guess 16 feet, the entire thing. So it's actually like the full size of a McDonald's menu board that you would see. And it was also sort of my first foray into really serious mixed media, in that the panels were mechanically produced rather than painted, all the type and the lettering. The paintings obviously were done by myself. And this is just a little close-up, a detail of one of the pieces. They're fully three-dimensional. They're not just a flat image. I sort of went into McDonald's and did some snaps of their menu board signage, and I really kind of wanted to just have have a big send-off, because I kind of knew that my fast food period was sort of winding, coming to a sort of a big pinnacle, and wanted to go out with a bang on that theme. And this is a close-up detail of the main piece from my Mctopia, and it's essentially an altarpiece. I mean, the halos and the sort of gold leaf paint, are really what, part of the Church of McDonald's, in essence, that we have nowadays. And I kind of like the idea that the drive-up menu, the order speaker, was really kind of like a confessional box. You drive up and you sort of say, give them your sort of sins, I guess, or ask for your sins, and then you kind of drive up the window and get your sort of absolution or your reward. That's what this piece is really sort of about. This is just another piece from the Mctopia series. This piece is called Big Mac. I've always been a big fan of surrealism, and I thought with this show I was kind of going all out with a lot of the imagery and really wanted to kind of hammer home sort of the mystic side of our devotion to popular culture. This is a piece done from 1997 called Lighthouse I. As I say, Mctopia was sort of a peak for me, and then what I wanted to do after that was kind of take a few steps back and really look at advertising and popular culture, and just sort of almost do a survey of all the what was going on. And I sort of picked advertising really as my starting point. So in this series, I've kind of looked at the Gap, Versace, and those sort of things. And this is the very first work that I started using Photoshop in some of the preparation work. In that it's pretty hard to get a poster of your friends into a bus shelter unless you've got some good contacts. So just for technical reasons, because you see it standing at an angle, the Photoshop was needed to manipulate the image, because that's really something that I couldn't eyeball and sort of figure out the kind of the way that the image would slightly recede. So Photoshop was certainly greatly instrumental in composing this piece. This is a companion piece to that called Lighthouse II. And I said, obviously it's fairly hard to sort of get a picture of your friends onto a pop machine. So this piece was a real a real sort of trial by fire for me for using Photoshop, because not only do you see this image from kind of a 45-degree angle, but you're also looking at it on a convex surface. So I'll just show you some of the technical things that I did for this piece. So this is obviously the finished work. And so what I did was just sort of have the model stand outside my studio, took some pictures of them posing. I kind of took the bodies and then cut her head off of this picture. I needed a Coca-Cola logo, so I just grabbed a 12-pack of Coke and sort of scanned that into the computers for some of the lettering and the artwork. And then sort of composed those three elements into the image that you'd see on the pop machine, just sort of standing from the front. And because the pop machine was a plexi, shiny surface, and it was a little hard to see the reflections in the actual pop machine, what I did was stand in the place of the pop machine and photograph the parking lot. This is sort of just the grocery store in my hometown, and sort of in the center of Chilliwack, and did a composite picture of the parking lot, and then using Photoshop, compressed it, and then reversed it as a mirror image, and then translucently overlaid it with the image of the folks there to give the glossy surface. And then with Photoshop and sort of wrapping, I've sort of just spent just a few hours having scanned in the original images and then getting this to look just so. Sort of one of the funny things I ran into, this was one of the few times I was still shooting, I took the opportunity to shoot people outside still, and the background that I had chosen for that day, when we showed up, they had actually moved the pop machine away. It was gone. So luckily I had a backup pop machine, and kind of oddly enough, this one worked out really well because the building that they stood in front of had this paneling that acted as a guide for drawing the perspective when I did the final painting. Luckily, I had done a scout shot of the location that I wanted to use, which I said had been moved. So, you know, just for technical reasons, it happened to not be from the same height. I'd shot it from standing, and I'd shot the models from about a foot lower. So